All right, hey guys, what is up? And welcome to the latest episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, the dimension where time does not exist, and the only thing that matters is film. From Canada, I'm Cole. From the US of A, there's Jay, and we welcome you to a second episode in our ambitious series of the Masters of Film, as we called it. Had to miss last week because just a bunch of stupid circumstances, and we almost wound up missing this week too. As you can see, we're a couple days late, but we managed to get this together, which is good because I mean it was a film I wanted to do. And so next up in our Masters, we've got the most famous Japanese director of all time, Akira Kurosawa. And when we were, as we said before, when we were trying to pick some of the films by some of these really celebrated directors, we didn't want to necessarily pick maybe their most well-known film and go off the board a little bit. Now, and I kind of, at least I know, I struggled a little bit about what we should pick for this. I mean, obviously his most famous is Seven Samurai, which is quite a film. It's a remarkable film, but it's also very long and stuff. And we thought that'd be probably too on the nose. And then I even thought, well, besides that, he's known for his samurai films, but he has a few non-samurai films. So I thought about something like Ikiru, or however you say it and stuff. But I don't know. We threw out a few names, and I just remembered how much I like this one, even if there's not a lot to say about it, because this is technically another samurai film. This is 1957's Throne of Blood, which, those that don't know, basically is kind of just a retelling of the Shakespeare play Macbeth, but with the action moved from medieval Scotland into feudal Japan, using samurais and such. And it's really cool. But yeah, for a while I was wondering, oh, maybe we shouldn't do a samurai one at all, but
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, but I, I was thinking he did more non-samurai films, but it's like everything I was looking at was samurai. So
yeah, I mean, no, he only did like a couple, unless you count like his like output in the 40s. So
mm,
Kurosawa obviously had a very long career, and yeah, and he was active all throughout the 40s. But most of those films aren't really known. It was the 50s that got him noticed. It was his 1950 film. Um, Crap, which one is that? Rashomon. That is basically what sort of put him on the map, and also was one of the first films that was what is it? It was like actually screened by like people in other countries and stuff like that. Actually, one of the things that Jay and I wanted to focus on in doing this series was filmmakers from other countries and world cinema. Rashomon is very much considered kind of a landmark in world cinema because it's kind of what got the whole thing started. This is 1950, and that's before that there wasn't much traffic sort of back and forth between other countries in regards to seeing their movies and stuff like that. So Rashomon kind of kicked that off for kind of all films and directors and stuff. I mean, yeah, you had of course plenty of other countries seeing, say, American movies, because America was the big industry in a lot of countries. But yeah, it wasn't until really getting into the 50s that yeah, other countries would start to see exports from other countries, non-Hollywood stuff, and you'd see some of the crossover effect where you'd have a Japanese filmmaker inspiring an American filmmaker, a French filmmaker inspiring a German filmmaker, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, Rashomon would be the first of several movies in the 50s that really just are, at least, I don't know exactly how big they were at the time, but are just considered absolute classics now. Rashomon in 1950, Ikiru in 1952, Seven Samurai in 54, Throne of Blood in 57, Hidden Fortress in 58, and then at the start of the 60s you've got Yojimbo and Sanjuro back to back. Hidden Fortress was one I thought of too, but I also thought, I don't know, maybe that also is a little obvious. That's the one that like George Lucas
yeah,
liked so much and used so much of in Star Wars and stuff. And what's also kind of funny is that we talk about, as we talk about these masters of film and they're absolute legends, blah blah blah. It's true, and I'm sure that in like the last say 20 years or so, I'm pretty sure Kurosawa has gotten his due in Japan. But the truth is, while he was really making films in the 50s and 60s, he wasn't really that well liked in Japan. especially not critically. The critics were very harsh on him, and one of their main complaints about him was they thought his films were too Western. They didn't appreciate the fact that he was influenced by Western filmmakers and put it into his own work, because I guess they just figured, he's a Japanese filmmaker, he should stick to the Japanese style, which, he didn't believe in that. He believed in taking what he liked from other things. But yeah, he was criticized quite harshly for that for a while, and I don't think that's the sentiment nowadays, but that's how it was when
Wow,
he was at his most busy.
I can't even see that. I mean, most of his stuff are like, medieval Japan.
Yeah, but it was very much like still the style he brought
Yeah.
to it, I suppose. Um, for instance, by the time he did this movie, was 1957, but during World War II, you couldn't even do Shakespeare stuff because it was banned. Because during World War II, because of all the jingoism they were trying to stir up with this whole imperial, this is when the Imperial Japan was still a thing, and stuff like that. They were really hard about foreign and outside influences and clamped down on it a lot because they wanted everybody to just focus on being Japanese, and Japan was the greatest country in the world. Stuff you'd see in other countries and do that stuff too. But yeah, so Shakespeare, although was certainly known to Japanese audiences as early as probably around the 1868 Meiji, or however you say it, Restoration period, when there'd be a lot of cross stuff with English and stuff. There were probably people who grew up, in the 20s, 30s, 40s that never got to read it. It wasn't until after the war that stuff got relaxed and stuff. And I guess because, yeah, this was actually something that was a long time in coming, and that he'd wanted to do it for a long time. It was something that he'd always admired and stuff, and was going to do it as early as back when he was doing Rashomon, but then didn't do it because he'd heard that Orson Welles was working on his own version of Macbeth, and he didn't want to have it come out around the same time, I guess. So even at that point, he was very conscious of what other filmmakers in other parts of the world were doing, which is pretty cool. But yeah, as I was saying to Jay, a lot of people, if they're not up on their Shakespeare, and they think maybe this isn't that long of a movie and it has a fairly quick pace, like, is it condensed from Macbeth? Not really. The truth is, Macbeth is actually one of the shorter Shakespeare plays out there. It's half the length of Hamlet. And I mean, still, this does cut things down in that it doesn't have, obviously, the poetic language that a Shakespeare play would have, but that's replaced by his own sensibilities, which are quite Japanese, really, because really what he replaced the Shakespearean language with was drama, the style of No, or however you say it, which is which is a kind of a style of drama from stage plays in Japan, coming out of like the 14th century. It's kind of a less known style. I think when most people hear about like Japanese stage stuff, they think, oh, kabuki, right? Mm-hmm. Well, kabuki's one. This is another. The main difference between this and kabuki is I think it's actually a little more accessible than kabuki. I can't really pin down a great definition of it, but it's just more like it just focuses on like because for one thing, kabuki, one of the main parts of it is costumes. This is costumes too, but different costumes. Kabuki, it has a lot of face paint. No is about masks. That's one thing that's not brought into Throne of Blood. They don't have characters wearing masks, although they do just kind of do a shout out to it, sort of with the Forest Witch character. Some of the way they have the face made up there is, I think, supposed to be an allusion to some of those masks they would use, because yeah, a lot of No stuff would usually have at least a couple like sort of like, what's the words, like supernatural-esque characters that might be I don't know, devils or demons or something angelic, and they usually have some sort of very expressive looking mask for that. And I'm pretty sure the witch is kind of the way they did that is kind of a shout out to that and stuff. And also the music is very much No, with sort of that traditional stuff. You hear that flute part, which to us just sounds, well, very Japanese and stuff. So yeah, it's not like he didn't bring Japanese stuff into it. He certainly did. There's a few things that it gets pretty complicated. It gets tied up in stuff like various Buddhist themes and stuff like that, and that's a little too complicated really to go into. But yeah, he actually does a pretty good job of transporting that kind of spirit into a play by a Westerner and still making it feel very Japanese. As he points out, he felt like there were a lot of good parallels between Scotland of that era and feudal Japan. The idea, I guess, sort of having a country that was full of like lords and their castles with their different following, which is very much what a lot of feudal Japan was. You know, you had an emperor, but then like once you got out into the more rural areas, you just had sort of almost independent. I mean, they paid lip service and stuff to the emperor and stuff, but you know, you had these shoguns or lords or whatever that basically would rule from a castle and would usually rule, you know, whatever communities were in the vicinity there, and they were more or less the top and stuff. So that's what you got going on here. Where so you got standing in for the king and the King Duncan. In this, we have a Lord Suzuki, and of course the soldiers are the higher up soldiers would be samurai, and our Macbeth character is crap. What is his name? Our Macbeth character is Waziku, or yeah, Wazizu, sir.
Yeah, I was going to let you go for the pronunciation on that one.
Washizu, yeah. Takatoki Washizu, played by Toshihiro Mifune, who is in almost every movie that Kurosawa did. They collaborated a lot until they had some sort of like falling out at some point in like the 70s or something like that, and they didn't talk for a long time. But eventually they did reconcile. But anyway, they did a bunch of movies together, and it basically made him a star in his home country, the actor. But that's kind of the other thing that I think lends itself well to a movie that's based on a Shakespeare play is that, you know, obviously Shakespeare, with the way the dialogue is and stuff, it lends itself to a certain kind of acting, which is kind of different for the screen than the stage, right? It's a little more oomph, it's a little more over the top and stuff. And I think The No is kind of a nice sort of compromise to that in a way, in that, yeah, you've got characters sort of spouting overly. I don't know. I think it fits pretty well. It's a good fit, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
But also another element that I didn't read anywhere, but I just thought of like at the beginning is like that the beginning takes sort of another sort of classic drama thing. You know, when you think about plays and stuff, if you want to go back before Shakespeare, what is there? Well, there's the Greek tragedies of the ancient world, and I just feel like the opening and closing songs are basically kind of like a Greek chorus because they're sort of just telling us stuff and then wrapping it up, which is kind of a cool little twist too that I enjoyed. Very haunting. This movie was shot on the slopes of Mount Fuji, I think basically to take advantage of the fog, because they really wanted to have lots of fog in the movie, which makes sense because, again, the original Macbeth was in Scotland, which is foggy as hell, and the fog is almost like another character in this movie, and I really enjoy it. Although there's one part, you probably think the same thing, near the beginning, when our main two characters there are coming back and they get lost in the forest. It goes on kind of a little too long. Like, I get that they're trying to convey that they're lost, but there's just like this really long part where they're like riding their horses kind of around in circles, and then there's just these different cuts. It's like from this angle, them riding up, then it cuts to this angle, them riding up. It's like, okay, when are we gonna get on with it? It's like, I get it, they're lost. I just thought that was funny, like how long it went on.
Yeah, I agree. There was a few scenes in the film like that, I think.
Where they would hold
just a little bit too long.
Yeah, they would hold on something a little long. And I don't know if that has to do with just, you know, being a more modern audience and having less of an attention span and stuff. Because I don't think so, though. Because usually I can appreciate things when they're, you know, they're trying to build a mood or atmosphere. Right. But yeah, I kind of felt like there were a couple times, like you said, they kind of just held on stuff a little too long. It's like, okay, we get it. And sometimes characters would just take too long to speak.
Yeah.
Like a massive pause. It's like, is anybody going to say anything? And then finally, you know, somebody would come out, and then they'd speak very quickly, which is kind of funny. I mean, it's not like I can understand Japanese anyway. I'm reading the subtitles, but it's just sort of funny that, like, it'd just be like this really long silence, and then somebody would just suddenly be like, blah, 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 and just blurt something out really fast. It was a little different than what I'm used to and got me a little impatient in parts. But as we said, for the most part, the film actually moves at quite a brisk pace, and yeah, you wouldn't really call it slow at all. Just like the structure of the actual play Macbeth, it's kind of the same thing. The longest part is the beginning, the lead up to the murder, and then after that, everything goes very quickly. Like, so, as you said before, we were talking about before show, like all the like action in like the end takes place in like 10 minutes. Like all this stuff that goes by really fast, and it's too bad in a way we don't get any real battle scenes. But at the same time, I get that that's not really what it's about. Like the whole point is, yeah, there's battles, but they're off screen, and then they just talk about them later. I don't know. Just being a samurai fan, it's too bad I didn't get to see any combat. But I mean, I get why that's not the focus of this movie.
Well, I mean, spoilers, obviously, but just the course from when she has her miscarriage to she goes crazy, and then she kills herself, and then the end of the film. It's really like only like 15 or 20 minutes. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that happens in that period of time.
Yeah, and that's his wife doing the Lady Macbeth thing. Again, following it the same way, in that she is the one that basically eggs him on and manipulates him into committing the murder in the first place, when it was something he never would have considered. And then as things go on, they switch. He becomes more ruthless and crazy, where she loses all her nerve and sort of becomes crazy in a different way. And they have the whole same thing where she's like trying to wash her hands because of the blood. It didn't even look like there was water in that scene. I swear that was empty. I was like, couldn't they at least get water for her? Or they're really just trying to show how crazy she is that she's not even using water? Like, I didn't understand.
Oh, and she was yeah, I think she was just. I don't think there was any water in there.
Yeah, but I couldn't figure out if that was intentional or if they just thought we wouldn't notice. Because I'm like, how hard is it to fill it with water?
Maybe it was just the black and white. Maybe they didn't want it to. I mean, they wanted it to be obvious that there was nothing on her hands.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking that. Well, that may confuse people.
Yeah. I mean, so that's obviously a little bit shortened, that she has a little less dialogue and stuff like that. Actually, the dialogue she says in the Macbeth version is pretty damn funny, because there's a one point where she's like talking about like, who knew the old man would have so much blood in him, or something like that, which I thought was a pretty funny line. They're talking to like, I just thought it would be so easy to kill this old guy, and just like in Macbeth, like the actual murder takes place off screen or off page or off panel. That's par for the course too. Like that's done on purpose. Which I'm fine with. This also was released by the studio Toho, which again was what most of Kurosawa's films were done by. What's funny is like late in his career, he expressed regret that he never got to direct a Godzilla film. He always wanted to, and the main reason it wasn't happening. And you would say, well, and you'd be like, well, why wouldn't they let him? I mean, he was the guy. But that was kind of the whole point. The whole reason was, the people that whoever it was that owned or were putting out the Godzilla films, they knew that if Toho put out a version of it, the production values would skyrocket up, and then from then on it would like become something different. So in a way, I kind of understand what they're doing, because they're like, okay, this is kind of a B movie. We can't have it, turn into this other thing.
I thought Toho did all the Godzilla movies.
Or okay, maybe it was just because of. Or maybe they just thought it would maybe it wasn't Toho. Maybe it was they just thought his involvement would be enough to make the production values go up. It's something like that. Yeah, maybe I misunderstood that a bit. But I think you're right now that you say it, Toho. That sounds right.
That's why I recognize that logo so well from all the monster movies as a kid, and obviously all of Kurosawa's films.
Yeah, I've seen a whole bunch of those too, but like a lot of people, I think, since I haven't seen them recently, I can't really distinguish from one from another.
It's really easy.
I know I've seen the original Godzilla, and I've seen the one called King of the Monsters, which came out only 2 years later. After that, it was just a series of versus films, and who knows what I saw.
I watched them all out of order, and I can't keep them straight.
Mecha Godzilla was in there. Yeah, I can't keep them straight at all. Like, the only one I really can remember distinctly is, like, the original. And I remember I really always enjoyed Godzilla 2000 because it was so stupid.
Yeah, that's a Japanese film, right? You're not talking about the American remake.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's true. They made an American remake of Godzilla 2000 as well. Yeah, that's right. No, it was the Japanese one. It's quite stupid, but I enjoyed it. I haven't seen it in like 15 years, but
Yeah, the quality on Godzilla films it ranges quite a bit. There's some really bad ones, like Son of Godzilla is pretty terrible, and it's really like cheesy, and it's more played up for children. But you've got other films that are a little bit more serious.
yeah. And you're right. Yeah, it was Toho themselves that turned down his requests,
Uh,
fearing that Kurosawa's epic style would completely demolish the usual budget of the franchise. So yeah, it was Toho themselves that wouldn't let him do it because
they thought he couldn't do it for the budget they were going to give to the film.
Exactly.
It's like, man, that would have been awesome.
Yeah. It's like, doesn't Godzilla deserve one epic, movie with great production value? Just one? I don't know.
Have you seen Shin Godzilla by any chance?
No, I haven't. I heard it was kind of a letdown.
Oh, man, they use CGI for quite a bit of it, and it's not good. I know, again, I'm complaining about CGI, but I'm not the only one.
No, I mean, I could still recognize some CGI when it's bad. I mean, I get it.
They had some suit design, but the CGI just it took me out of it. It's really, really bad. There's some clips on YouTube of some of the stuff that they didn't use in the film that is absolutely terrible. That's apparently on deleted scenes on the Japanese Blu-ray. But yeah, it was a really good idea, a good story. It has good actors in it, but it's just the monster design really takes me out of the film.
Let's do that. Because, yeah, the thing was, when it was coming out, there was kind of a bit of buzz and anticipation about it. And I was pretty excited, too. And then, eventually I just heard a lot of people say, it's not really that good at all, which made me kind of sad. But it's good to know they're still making Godzilla films anyway.
Yeah. They've got the Godzilla vs. Kong coming, I think, after Godzilla 2. They're making another Godzilla, American Godzilla film, and then King Kong versus Godzilla.
Man, I hate it. I like the 98 one more than the 2014 one. I really do.
Really?
The 2014 one bothers the hell out of me. And it's not even the main complaint people have is like Godzilla's not in it enough. That's not really my complaint. I just really can't stand the human characters in it. And things they do don't make sense, especially that whole ending part where they all jump out of the plane to get to the air. Like, there's actually no reason for them to do that at all. And it also bothered me that they dragged Ken Watanabe into it just so they could make it seem like it would legitimize it just by having him say some badass lines. Like, he should have just said no.
Yeah, Bryan Cranston was in there for 5 minutes, and
yeah,
kind of a waste.
Yeah, he's like what is it? He's like a power plant worker that's freaking out about it or something.
Is that? Yeah, I don't know. So I kind of feel the same way you do. Like, I liked it initially when I saw it in the theater, and then
I didn't like it initially either. I did not enjoy it in the theater.
On recent watches, or I think I've only watched it one other time. It really didn't. I think it's a lot better than the 98, but
no, I feel like the 98 actually had a more interesting plot. Like, I mean, I get it, yeah. Like, the 98, I don't like how the monster looks. Like most people, it's like they're just going for some sort of T-Rex instead of a Godzilla, right? Like, but I actually thought it had a better plot, and I liked that it was in New York and stuff.
It's awful. Oh man, get me started on that.
I'm not trying to defend it. It's a good movie. It's not. It's definitely not a good movie.
I went and I watched the riff tracks in the theater of that, and I couldn't even sit through that. Cool. I had to leave that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how bad I hate that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Matthew Broderick, man, he's the worst.
Yeah, he should not have been anywhere near that movie. Like, I have no idea what they were thinking for that.
He's good in war games and stuff, but not in that.
Yeah. That's a lot of fish.
Oh man, well.
And the whole thing with the babies running around, the main problem with Godzilla the 98 version is they were just too influenced by Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
They were just we'll have the babies running around like they're raptors. We'll have Godzilla look more like he's a T-Rex than a monster. It's like,
he really looks
that. Just do Godzilla.
He looks like a giant iguana or something to me.
Yeah, he does. That's pretty much
more of a lizard-like body than a. I think that's what Godzilla originally was, wasn't it? It was like a mutated T-Rex.
Oh, I don't remember what it actually is. It's something mutated, right? Something caused by nuclear.
There's been a few different, reimaginings of the origin, but I think that
Right.
was the original.
Yeah. But yeah, it's too bad Kurosawa never got to do one. It would have been cool
Sucks.
to see a Godzilla with like some wonderful scenery porn and stuff and all that stuff he's known for. Speaking of George Lucas, this movie also has the wipes that Kurosawa would use that George Lucas would then put in Star Wars, the scene wipes.
Kind of take that for granted now. We've seen it so much since, but it's.
That was really going against the grain at the
Yeah,
time.
right.
It was like hokey and terrible at the time. Like people were just like, "Oh, they're awful," but Kurosawa stood by them, which is pretty cool.
I think they felt the same way when Lucas tried to do it. I mean, I think people did. I mean, not fans, but producers and stuff.
Yeah, probably. But I understand it with that because like they didn't get what Lucas was going for that he was doing. Yeah, I get that. But yeah, I mean, it's just pretty interesting the way that Kurosawa was influenced by Western stuff and then would in turn influence Western stuff. I mean, the best example, a couple of Westerns that are just basically remakes of his plot. The Magnificent Seven is just a cowboy retelling of Seven Samurai. And then, what is it? A Fistful of Dollars is more or less a direct remake of Yojimbo. The plot would once again be used in the movie that nobody likes that I kind of like. Although it's not nearly as good a movie, obviously. Last Man Standing with Bruce Willis. They all have the same. All three movies have the same plot. It's like a nameless drifter shows up in like in a lawless town that has like two competing factions, and then he sort of plays them off each other to profit and stuff. And that originated with Yojimbo and stuff.
Yeah, I think Yojimbo may be my favorite Kurosawa film. Of course, I haven't seen all of his films.
There's still a bunch I haven't seen either,
but I've seen all the big ones. Rashomon and all the samurai films.
I've never seen Ran, and everybody says Ran is so beautiful.
That's in color, right?
Yeah, it's in color. It's 85.
Yeah.
It's also considered his bleakest film, and it's also another Shakespeare one. Although it's less of an adaptation, direct adaptation, the way this is of Macbeth, but it more or less is kind of the same story as King Lear, with various changes here and there and stuff. King Lear, yeah, that's a really bleak Shakespeare play too, man. I always really enjoyed it, but yeah, it's pretty damn bleak. But yeah, a lot of people, I really need to see Ran. A lot of people say Ran's just a beautiful film.
It is. It's nice to see him work with color and be able to utilize that. It's a very colorful film.
Yeah. But yeah, I've seen Rashomon, Seven Samurai, Throne of Blood, Hidden Fortress, Yojimbo Senjuro. I think that's all of them. I think those are all the ones I've seen.
I forgot about Senjuro. Yeah, that one's good too.
Yeah. Senjuro is a really cool main character. I always really enjoyed that guy in it. That's once again Toshihiro Mifune, because he's all over the place.
He really worked that top knot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very worthy sequel to Yojimbo for sure, and it's a little more funny too. It's got some pretty good humor in it that still holds up today, which is hard to say about a movie from the early '60s from Japan. But I always thought it had some pretty funny stuff. Although it has a really kind of downer kind of ending. Yeah, a lot of the movie has a lot of good comedic stuff going on in it. This movie's not. This movie's straight Macbeth. There's nothing funny going on. But yeah, it is nice to see him work with color. But I really do enjoy this movie in black and white. I think this one is great in black and white. Just because of the area they're supposed to be in, this place, the Spiderweb Forest, whatever it's called, the really great shots of the fog, of course, but just this really oppressive kind of forest. I really like the beginning where him and his friend, wind up finding the witch. Oh yeah, that's the other scene that goes on too long. They let the witch sing this song that has 65 verses before actually talking to her. They're creeping up, watching her, and you keep expecting, okay, any second now they're gonna talk to her, and they just stand there and creep a little closer while she sings verse after verse of this song that has no frigging ending.
Oh, man.
That's the other part that just goes on way too long.
It did go on too long.
I'm like, this is the longest song ever, and even if it wasn't, why are you letting her sing it? You show them creeping up, so it's like, okay, they're gonna they're gonna spring out at her and talk to her.
Right.
But they wait and they wait and they wait and they wait, and it's almost excruciating.
Yeah, it's really creepy and well done. You know, the way
Yeah.
they portray the witch, but it's
Oh
like,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, I almost wonder if the translation on that song was not right because, man, some really weird lyrics to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always
It didn't
really
make
hard to
sense. I mean,
translate
like,
these things. I've seen a lot of, Japanese songs and stuff, and it's very hard to make them translate into English in a way that sounds good or makes sense just because of how different the languages are, right? Like, because we read it and it sounds really awkward or stiff, but in Japanese, even though it means the same thing, it just flows better because of, the word placement and the sentence structure and all that stuff. It's always really awkward whenever you're translating these things, it seems. It's a really creepy song, like you said, and a really cool, creepy atmosphere.
yeah, the voice on that thing, it kept changing. I think the speed.
Hmm.
At one point, it got really slow, and I was like, God, what is going on
I
here?
think at least two different actors dubbed that voice.
Really?
I think so, because to me, maybe I'm crazy, but it sounded different to me later in the movie. It
Hmm.
sounded like a different voice, but maybe I'm wrong. I'll have to look into that maybe, because I mean, I think it was a woman physically playing, and they refer to her as a witch. Although it's hard to tell with all like the weird makeup and stuff they have on and stuff like that. I mean, they think it's female, but it's obviously a male voice. But yeah, but yeah, she's the forest spirit. But that is sort of the one moment too. Like as I was saying, although it's a Shakespeare sort of adaptation, the language is replaced. It's not the poetic
Right.
Shakespearean language. It's different. But the one scene where they do kind of do that is the stuff with the witch, where the witch has some sort of, even though it's not directly from the play or anything, it's just sort of Shakespeare-esque lines when she's giving her prophecy and stuff to Wazizu. She says, "If you choose the path of bloodshed, then climb to the pinnacle of evil. If you choose to build a mountain of corpses, build its summit as high as you dare. If you will make the blood flow, let it be a river. No, an ocean of blood." That's the second time. That's when he goes out to
Yeah.
when he rides out by himself, and she gives him prophecy about how he won't lose a battle unless the forest comes against him.
He
So
had a really good line. It was like, I'm going to put a mountain of bodies on top of these bones, or this
yeah,
uh, dusty bones, or something like that.
yeah,
It was a really cool line. The translation, at least.
yeah, it's cool. So I guess this would be Sengoku era, which would have been like I think maybe it's the Warring States period. So that would have been like either the late 1400s or the early 1500s. Although there's nothing that definitely says that. That's just sort of a guess by the way they're dressed and stuff like that. The costumes are really good and stuff. I
Yeah.
don't know. There's quite a few there's quite a few samurai films out there where like I don't know if they just had a bad budget or what, where the samurai costumes just look like garbage. But never in a Kurosawa film.
That's
A
what I was going to
Kurosawa
say.
film, they've always got really great looking stuff, and this has a lot of soldiers in full armor and stuff. It's very impressive.
Yeah, it is. I was really impressed with the sound design too. I don't know if it was something to do with I watched the Criterion edition, and I don't know if they had maybe did I don't know what you call a remaster of that, but it sounded really good and really crisp.
Yeah, some bits of it I thought they could do almost sort of an echoey quality,
Hmm.
which was really cool, which I enjoyed. Yeah, it's definitely like a Blu-ray I'd like to get.
Yeah,
But I never see it. The only one I ever see is Seven Samurai, which whenever I see it is like $60 or something. Not saying it's not worth that because it's like a crazy big package with all sorts of stuff on, and Criterion, they do it up, and it's a great film on. But it's a lot of money to put out, and just over the years I haven't done it. But I don't know. Someday, I always think I always fantasize about having sort of a samurai collection, not just the really great ones, but even some of the more, B movie-esque ones, because there's quite a few of those I enjoy.
That Criterion Blu-ray Samurai set is, I mean, it's ridiculously priced now, but I know a friend of mine bought it when it came out, and it just wound up being worth so much money he had to sell it because everyone wanted to get the set.
Yeah, there was this really good trilogy that I like a lot from the 60s. It's in color. I can't remember what it's called, but like they're just like some of those violent samurai films ever. Like the whole thing is just about like guys fighting and stuff. And I only saw the first one. I rented it years ago from Video Difference, but they had the whole set, and it was one of the ones I really wished I could have bought when the store went out of business, but it was already gone when I got there, which is too bad because yeah, there were several of those that I was specifically looking for, but obviously I wasn't the only person with my eye on it. Yeah.
Criterion's are pricey, man. It's probably one of the best companies, putting stuff out, but by far the priciest.
Yeah, like as far as like overall quality of an edition goes, like the best movie I own is like the Criterion edition of Brazil. Probably, I've got the director's cut thing of Brazil, the Blu-ray, the Criterion, and it's just amazing. It's so good.
They're all numbered, and there's people out there that have every release, and
there are hundreds of them because there's not just one big one. Because that's another thing I found out is that like specifically when it comes to like a lot of foreign movies, including a lot of Japanese movies, they have releases for like way lesser known movies. That's why I have a couple. Like for instance, I've got this one from the 60s called Fighting Elegy, which is not a classic by any means, but technically it is a Criterion. That's one of the ones I did manage to buy at the store there. And it's just, it's not really a classic. It's just sort of this movie, but
yeah.
But it is technically a Criterion.
Some of their stuff is kind of odd. Like you wonder why they chose it,
Yeah.
Or a Criterion release. And
there's a few like that for sure.
Why some films have it and some don't. I don't know. I'd like to know what they're. It's like, man, I just really like Mallrats, so.
Yeah, I really like Mallrats. I do.
I mean, it's an okay movie, but I mean.
Yeah, I get it. No, it's one of my favorite comedies.
And like all of Wes Anderson's stuff usually gets a Criterion.
Yeah, and that's the most recent one I got was was that Orc got me my favorite, Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. So that's the most recent one I got, courtesy of our generous friend Orc. Like I didn't really believe him when he was telling me he would get it for me, but he did. So that's really awesome of him. We wish Orc the best, and hopefully we'll be seeing him soon.
Orc's in the comments.
Is he? Great.
Hamming it up as always.
Good stuff, Orc. But yeah, I was also saying before the show that what's kind of funny is, so obviously being based on a Shakespeare play, Macbeth, there's lots of different film adaptations of Macbeth. And what's funny is like Throne of Blood, while it's not really a direct adaptation, it's just sort of a reimagining. It's still actually considered one of the best versions of Macbeth, which is kind of cool. But the first one I saw when I was in high school and we were doing the play. And it's from 1971. It was actually directed by Roman Polanski, but it's not really as high scale as that sounds. And actually, they couldn't even get funding for the movie, and the people that wound up actually funding it were Playboy. So it is the Playboy version of Macbeth, and that was the first one I saw. And apparently, when I was reading about Throne of Blood here on Wikipedia, they said like it's been years since I've seen it now, but they were saying like. Has some similarities to it in shots of characters setting down twisted roads, set design, using music to identify locations and psychological conditions and stuff. Like that was all sort of influenced by how they did it in Throne of Blood. And one of the funniest things about this version of Macbeth is that the actress playing Lady Macbeth spends most of the time after she kind of loses her mind, like running around bottomless, which is really funny.
Maybe that was part of the Playboy connection.
I would assume so. Her name was Francisca Annis.
You keep saying more and more things that mean I have to watch this movie as soon as possible. Like,
yeah.
Okay, Playboy put it out. Roman Polanski. Okay, no pants. I'm on board.
Yeah. She was also in the 1984 Dune. Although I don't know who else she played, but yeah. So yeah, that actress, you can get to see her running around without any pants or dress or anything on, which is pretty funny. Like I said, it was funny for me because like I first saw it like in high school in class with friends and stuff, and a teacher and stuff. It was kind of funny. We had a pretty open-minded teacher. Yeah, but it was a commercial failure. This movie, but I don't know. It seemed like a pretty decent version from what I remember. Kind of need to see it again. John Finch, I believe, in the title role. Yeah, John Finch. What's funny is, like, for some reason I was thinking it's too old. Obviously, I was thinking Patrick Stewart was in it, but no, I saw Patrick Stewart in, I don't know, some other Shakespeare thing, but not this one.
He's done quite a bit of Shakespeare.
Yeah, but this would have been old. This would have been like at least the 80s, I think.
The first thing I saw Patrick Stewart in was that damn Toby Hooper.
The first thing you saw him in, or the earliest thing you saw him
the
in?
earliest thing I saw him in. Sorry.
Right.
Toby Hooper, the one with the space vampire.
Oh yeah.
Matilda May.
Yeah, I can't think either, but
yeah, everything about it but the title.
We'll look up Patrick Stewart here.
Okay, space vampire. I bet y'all find it immediately.
Trying to think. Is that Life Force? Yeah, I was gonna say Life Force.
He's so young. He's smooth, like all over. He's bald. I don't think he ever actually had hair, but
yeah. Well, he was in Dune the year before that, right?
Okay.
Here's something that's really
84? Wow.
Here's something that's really kind of weird. Not about Patrick Stewart, but about this movie. It's just one of I always have weird coincidences happen in my life, especially when it comes to like movies that I'm watching, where I'll just find like weird things to like connect them and stuff. And what was it? It was something. Oh yeah, so I was looking up No, the No style. And when I was down looking at things like about people like from other countries and stuff that were influenced by No and stuff, one of the people was influenced by the music was what's his name? I forget his name. David Byrne, right? Byrne. And what's funny about that is that just today I watched a movie I like a lot, Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. And that ends with Psycho Killer Qu'est-ce que c'est by Talking Heads, David Byrne's band and stuff. So I was earlier in the day looking up Talking Heads. So that's kind of funny. In looking up No, that it was talking about David Byrne being influenced by it. And it even said he was influenced by he encountered No when he was on tour in Japan with Talking Heads. So that's kind of funny. I like these weird coincidences. These sorts of things happen to me all the time where I'll just be like reading about something and I'll be reading about something completely unrelated. There'll be some sort of connection there. So that's another one that happened to me.
Weren't they doing a sequel to that Leslie Vernon?
It would be nice if it would ever fucking happen.
I thought they did a Kickstarter or something. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, I would have contributed if I knew. Because, I mean, yeah, when that song is playing, it gives you, the little thing there, like, that shows that he's still alive, so it's, perfect segue to set up a sequel. That never happened. I loved that movie. I saw it in theaters. I was super happy with it and stuff. And then, like, I was always expecting a sequel and never happened. But
you saw it in theaters?
Yeah, I saw it in theaters.
Wow. I didn't even know it got released.
It didn't get a wide release. I just sort of lucked into it. And, like, almost nobody was there either. It's not like it was one of those big, like, special screenings like I got to go to, like, for certain things like Shaun of the Dead and stuff like that. Like, there wasn't really any buzz about this movie. Like, nobody was really there. The only reason I saw it, basically, was because I saw something else, like, a couple months earlier in the theater, and it was another sort of off-the-board type thing. And they had a preview for it at that movie. And I was like, oh, I have to find this. And that's more or less why I wound up seeing it in the theater. And again, just because I was lucky enough that it was in a theater at least too. Because no, it was not a wide release at all.
It's a prequel. Before The Mask, The Return of Leslie Vernon.
If it's before, how's it The Return? That's weird.
Yeah, that's a good, good point.
I still want to see it, but I hope it's not dead.
It seems they're posting about it, but I have no idea where in the production they are.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's on their Facebook page. They did an Indiegogo campaign.
Ah,
That's funded, 112% funded on May 13th of 2017. Huh. Oh wait, hold on. This is a comic book series. Okay.
okay. Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes that's all you get.
Yeah, that's
Better than nothing.
better than nothing, exactly.
Then even every once in a while, sometimes they're really good. Although I can't keep track of them all because there's so many things.
So many.
Just like I remember the last year they did a mini series on what we just watched, Big Trouble in Little China. And at first I was going to collect it, but then I got distracted doing other things and stuff. So
Oh, there's so much stuff that I want to get into. Like, I want to read that Swamp Thing series. I've been wanting to read that for years and just haven't ever gotten around to it.
the original one, or
No, the
like,
new one.
oh right, yeah.
Who's doing it? You would know who it is.
Um,
Shit.
when I was collecting it, it was actually. Oh no, it wasn't. Never mind. I was thinking of Animal Man because I was gonna say
I cannot think of it.
Jeff Lemire, but it's not Jeff Lemire. He was doing Animal Man, and this would have been years ago anyway. This would have been like 2012.
Now, this is probably like in the past decade. They revamped it.
Oh yeah, I know. As I said, that's what I said. It was probably the one that came out at the same time as that element. It was probably maybe it was the new 52 one.
I'm
Hold
not
on,
sure.
I'll
Anyway,
check.
that's just one of the things that I wanted to get into.
Yeah, I have the first two volumes of the Alan Moore run, but I still need the third, which is quite fantastic.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think who the hell was doing it after that. Maybe it was Scott Snyder.
And maybe who it is. Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
It's part of the new 52. You're right.
Yeah. Scott Snyder's good, actually. He was the guy I brought up before when we were doing Waterworld. He was the guy that wrote that graphic novel, The Wake, that I was showing. That was kind of similar to Waterworld. Yeah, he's a good writer. But yeah, he's probably the guy that's done the most stuff on Batman in the last, 7 or 8 years. Although I don't know what he's on now, but he might even still be doing Batman. But yeah, Swamp Thing was just one of those things where it never sounds interesting really, and then you read it and you're like, wow, it was really good, kind of thing. At least for me. I mean, maybe some people that's right up their alley. It wouldn't have been right up my alley. But
Well,
then,
I was into the
Monsters,
series and the cartoon series as well.
never saw the cartoon series. I was aware of it, but yeah, and the movie. And you can say what you want about the movie, but that's the whole reason that the Alan Moore series even existed.
Yeah.
The series had been canceled by the time the movie was coming out, and somebody was just like, well, maybe to coincide with the movie, we can relaunch the series. And that's what they did. And then that series started to peter out, and then they called up Alan Moore, and they're like, I don't know if you want this, but it's dying. Maybe you can have it. And he's like, sure. And he's just letting it change some things, which is, Alan Moore's whole career. Do you mind if I change some things? No, go ahead, Alan. And yeah. Yes, Kat.
I actually like part 2 better than part 1 of the film. The Heather Locklear versus the Adrienne Barbeau.
Yeah, I know I saw part 2 too. I just don't really remember it.
I watched the original Swamp Thing not too long ago, and I was like, gosh, this is really just not very good.
No, it hasn't aged well at all.
But yeah, what I was going to ask you is I finally watched The Handmaid's Tale. We marathoned it in 2 days.
It was too slow even for me.
Oh, you saw it?
I saw
okay.
6 episodes.
Oh, wow.
And I liked things about it, but even for me, it was too slow. I was like, oh my god. I felt it moved at a snail's pace. Maybe if I stuck with it, it would have been rewarding. But yeah, for a while, I watched at least the first 5 or 6. I liked, the tone and the world they set up and stuff. I just felt like it went too slowly. Because it's always been a book I really like.
Really cool. I was going to ask you if you'd ever read it. I hadn't never read it.
Oh yeah, well, I think most Canadians have read something by Margaret Atwood. She's one of our more celebrated authors. That's probably, even though I don't think she cares about it that much, it's probably still her most famous book, even though she's done a million books. Actually, my favorite book by her is like one like nobody knows or has read. It's called The Edible Woman. And it's not even really that special if you hear. It's just about this woman that like I can't even remember now. It's been so many years, but it's like she's about to get married. She's kind of living kind of a perfect life, and she's about to marry this really great guy. Then all of a sudden, she feels like she can't eat meat anymore, so she just sort of out of nowhere becomes like a vegetarian. But as time goes on, it's not like just meat. Suddenly, she just feels like she can't eat anything, and now like she can barely eat at all. And at the same time, she meets this like guy who's younger than her, that's like some sort of like college dropout slacker, and she starts having an affair with him for no reason. And I don't know, but for some reason I just really like the book. Maybe I just read it at the right time. I was only about 15 and it felt like kind of quite the mature book at the time to me to read. I don't know, but I always really liked that book. But yeah, most people, if you're naming Margaret Atwood books, that's not one that would come up. Usually it's Cat's Eye and Cat's Eye and Handmaid's Tale.
Well, the question I wanted to ask you, I mean, I really like the show, first of all, but I'm going to have to go track down the book and read it now. But or the series of books, isn't it? Was it like there's just one?
I think there's just one.
Okay.
Unless she might have done a sequel many years later, but I mean, for a long time, it was just one book. She wrote it around 84, 85, and by the time I read it in the mid 90s, it was still the only book.
One of the big things I was reading was different in the book is, there's also racism, as you would imagine when you have sexism would go hand in hand. And they basically,
I think there was some stuff about Jews in there.
Yeah, I think what I was reading about the Jews is they gave them an opportunity to go back to Jerusalem, but they would just put them on a boat and just dump them in the ocean. The ones that actually chose to do that,
and they weren't like allowed to breed, I think.
But I was the showrunner of this, Bruce Miller, the guy who basically started this whole show up. He says when asked about why did you change it for the show, because there are it's like race doesn't exist in the film. They're treated no different.
Yeah, that's right.
He says, what's the difference between making a TV show about racists and making a racist TV show where you don't hire any actors of color? Which I really don't agree with that, because, I mean, how else are you supposed to show that racism exists, Just because you have it in your movie doesn't mean that you feel that way. I mean, I don't know.
I know. It feels like the same sort of, like, criticism for, like, if you criticize, like, I don't know, say, like, a movie that's like set in some era in some part of the world, and then you criticize it because you're just like, well, there weren't any like female Hispanics in that movie. What the hell's wrong with you? It's just like, because it doesn't fit the setting,
But it's I mean, real life it sucks. There are racist people. There's people that feel this way and that way and everything else. I don't see how making a movie or a TV show that has that displayed in it makes you like you agree with that way of thinking. I don't know. It's almost just like a really uber PC way of looking at things, because it reminds me of what HBO, that HBO show, which I don't even know.
Everybody was flipping out about
the status of it is, but
it's still going on. Like HBO is stuck to their guns. They stuck to their guns, which is good, because back in like the summer, massive backlash. People flipping out about this show that doesn't even exist yet. Confederate. It's another speculative fiction show. The idea is if the South had won the war, and now we were living in this world where slavery was still legal, blah blah blah. Like, and people were just flipping out about how horrible taste it is and stuff. And I just don't get it. And a lot of people making tweets and stuff saying like how what is it, like black suffering has always been a source of entertainment for the American public or something. I'm like,
oh man,
come on, man. I don't know. Yeah, people saying like the show is some sort of like wish fulfillment for racists. I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure the show is actually going to show that this world is quite problematic. I don't think the show is going to be like everything's great, it's a utopia. Like, I really don't think so. And I bet you that the black characters are actually going to be very important and not just going to be fodder that gets dumped on. But as far as I know, the show is still happening.
I
Like, they
don't.
didn't back down, which is
I
good,
don't.
because not only do I not agree with censoring stuff, but I really don't agree with censoring stuff before you've even fucking seen it. Like,
Yeah.
nobody's seen anything. The show hasn't even been shot yet, and people are flipping out saying, "No, we don't want this. No, no, no." Give
But
me a
it's
break.
just like, I mean, are you like so sheltered that you don't want to admit to yourself that that ever happened or anything? You know, I don't know.
Yeah. What's funny
But
is I don't remember what network it came on, but like something that I've never had access to, but I really want to see it now because like the book I just read was The Man in the High Castle
oh yeah,
by Philip K. Dick, and they did make a show of it, although it has quite a few departures, and I'm really interested in that. And that's also speculative fiction. It's the idea is if we lost we lost World War II and the Axis powers had won World War II and the things. And I mean, it's done in such a way where it's not realistic and like that, but also it was written in 1962 when certain stuff wasn't even known about the war, right? It's easier for us to say, well, the Japanese, doing a full scale invasion of the west coast of America would have been impossible, or this or that, like that. Put that aside, doesn't matter. It's really very interesting book, especially in that, like, when you first hear about it, you probably think it's going to focus more on that than it does. I mean, but the most of the characters are just sort of, well, they're kind of not central to any of that. Most of them are just characters living in that world. For instance, the move, like the in this world, slavery has once again been made legal, and blacks are slaves. But like slaves get mentioned like once or twice, and there are no black characters in anything like that. And I don't. And again, I don't think that's a whole thing. That's just the way the book is written. Like, 'cause it's just about other people is all stuff. So and stuff like that. It's a very interesting book, and I liked it quite a bit. But I heard that just recently they made a show of it, and it's on
yeah,
some network, but I don't
it's on
know.
Amazon, I think.
There you go. But I also found out it makes quite a few sort of vast departures from the book. I think because they really want. I think they felt the book was too subtle with some of that. For instance, one of the characters in the book is a German guy, so he's like part of like the Nazi party or whatever like that. But he's just like one more guy. In the book, they make him like actually like a close associate of Hitler. It's not in the book. I mean, in the show, they make him like a close associate of Hitler. Hitler, it's never even seen in the book. It's mentioned that Hitler's going crazy from syphilis and is just a figurehead now, while other people are taking up the reins. But in this, I guess they really felt like, well, you can't not have Hitler. So I guess Hitler is a character in this. So they made some fairly big changes, and I'm not criticizing because I don't know, but it's funny that I just read that book, so yeah, speculative fiction is kind of on my radar again.
They're
But
also
again,
doing
like,
that.
should people have freaked out at Philip K. Dick? He's like, you're presenting a world where, we lost World War II and the Nazis and Imperial Japan are in charge. That's in such poor taste. You're such a horrible person and racist. And
I mean, it's all fiction anyway. I mean,
it's fiction.
it's I don't
Yeah,
understand
what
that.
if is one of the best questions in fiction. That's how it exists. What if this was a thing? It
Yeah,
doesn't mean this would be great. It means this might be interesting and entertaining because it's not real, And it just boggles my mind that people don't get that.
yeah, I was just kind of shocked that maybe that was just his cop out of saying, I wanted to have black people in my show,
Yeah,
which it's fine. I mean, I love the actress that's in the film that plays the handmaiden, but she's from Orange Is the New Black, by the way. The
the
friend.
main. Oh yeah, I was gonna say her friend who's black. Yeah.
Oh, the main girl, man, she looks really familiar, but I don't think I've seen anything that she's ever done before. I know she was married to Fred Armisen for a while.
I've seen her. So let me think for a minute. Need to find her name again.
She looks really familiar, but
No, I've seen her. TV series.
It's been in things that I haven't seen. But anyway, season 2 comes out in next month, so I actually have Hulu now, so I was trying to catch up.
Okay, that's Elizabeth Moss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's see now. I know why I know her. I know her from Girl Interrupted.
Okay. I've seen Girl Interrupted, but it was years ago, and I don't even remember her character.
She's one of them. She's just one of the ones there in the nut house.
One of the crazies.
Yeah. I think she's the one that set fires.
She was also in Mad Men, which I never watched any Mad Men. So
I never watched that either. I guess that's what most people would have known her from recently, as Mad Men or that show. She's in a bunch of movies I haven't seen, but yeah, but that's how I know her. Her first ever role was Little Girl in Suburban Commando.
Wow! Oh shit! She wasn't one of the main kids though.
No, just I don't know, some kid.
Some random.
That's Hulk Hogan, isn't it?
Yep.
Awesome.
I think Milna Kunis, whatever you say her name, Mia.
Yeah, Kunis.
Her first film was Santa Has Muscles, which also had Hulk Hogan in it.
I hadn't even heard of that one. I used to be obsessed with her. I loved her. I mean, I still like her, but back when she was like on, that first show, that 70s show and stuff, I like desperately wanted her to be my girlfriend.
Oh yeah. Yep, she has a very, very unique look.
Yeah, she's Ukrainian. So am I.
There you go.
She's more Ukrainian than I am, but
it's meant to be.
It's meant to be, obviously, yeah. It's funny too, because she has that look, and the guy, I think it's Joel McHale, plays like the asshole guy in the first Ted movie, and at one point when he's hitting on her, he says like, "You got that smoky Mediterranean, I don't know, look," or something like that. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it is kind of like a racially ambiguous look that she has. She almost looks Hispanic sometimes.
Yeah,
but
she's Vulcan thought is what she is.
Her first film.
Santa Has Muscles. That's hilarious. So Hulk Hogan, Santa? Or does he kill Santa? Yeah. He kills him and replaces him like Tim Allen?
I don't remember the plot. I watched it a few years ago. It's pretty terrible.
Remember, that's what Tim Allen did. He killed Santa, then took his place.
And I'm sorry, it's her second film. She was in Piranha.
Oh, there you go.
Apparently a Piranha remake in 95.
No, never heard of that either. Great stuff.
Wow. I watched that the Dana Carvey documentary about his TV show last night that we talked about a while back.
Yeah.
It was a really good documentary, man. I've got to watch that show now because it's crazy how many people were involved with it.
Really?
Like Steve Carell was in it. Louis C.K. was a writer.
Oh, wow.
Oh man, it's just so many like really talented people behind it. But it was right after like as soon as they released their first episode, then Disney bought ABC. And their show was like really edgy. Like the first sketch, in a different direction. Exactly. The first sketch they aired was Bill Clinton. He had like 6 teats, and he was feeding babies and puppies with his teats. Nice. And like that's what they opened with. So, and it was right after Home Improvement. So they're like you got the people that are tuned in for the family time.
That was the show I watched in the 90s. Home Improvement.
Man, this looks amazing, man. I think they only did like 8 episodes. And they didn't even get to air the last one. They aired an older episode of Coach instead.
Never watched Coach, but I know what it is.
Yeah. Bill Hader was on the documentary. He was like, "Man, I thought my VCR messed up, and I had to end up watching Coach." He thought he'd recorded the wrong thing, but they didn't show it. That's I'd recommend checking out that documentary if you can. It's really interesting, and I'm gonna watch the show now because I remember watching it back when it was on, but not really liking it very much. I don't know, but I would have definitely been into that type of humor though in the mid-90s.
Yeah, it would have been. around 96, I guess.
Because I was, really into Kids in the Hall and other
Yeah, me
types
too.
of alt comedy.
Yeah,
So I
same here.
definitely would have liked it.
Big Kids in the Hall fan.
Oh, you're Canadian. You have to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was just on anyway, right? It was kind of fed to me.
Yeah.
Although I didn't actually watch it when it was originally on CBC. It wasn't until a few years later when they started putting it on our comedy network. Because I mean, yeah, that would have been like late 80s, early 90s. I would have been too young. So yeah, I mean, actually, I was watching it basically when it was ending,
Mm-hmm.
but I was watching, reruns and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, love that stuff.
It was one of the things that Comedy Central played here in the States quite a bit. So that's where I watched a lot of it.
You should still track down that weird movie they made in 2010, or it's more of a mini series. It's called like Death Comes to Town or something. It's so weird. Where they just play all these multiple characters in a town where there's this murder and there's a trial and stuff.
I know
It's
you
so
told me
messed up.
about it, but I'm trying to remember. Is it Kids in the Hall? Is that in the title?
It's called Death Comes.
Yeah, here it is. I've been trying to. Oh, it's actually a show, right? Oh, I think you're frozen.
Yeah, it is the Kids in the Hall, Death Comes to Town. So yeah, they do have that in the okay, not 2010, 2008. Yeah, it aired in 2010. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
They were doing a tour like maybe a year ago, and gosh, I thought really hard about going to try to see them on tour. As they came, like I could probably drive like 4 or 5 hours and see them, but it was just too expensive.
Yeah. Probably a really good show. They just strike me as
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah, this would have been an 8-episode miniseries. I didn't see all of it, but I saw most of it. And there's just so many characters, and they're all playing multiple characters and stuff like that. It's just so weird. It's something like they're trying to do like the town, even though it's like a small town, it doesn't make any sense. They're trying to do like a bid to get the Summer Olympics and stuff, and then like somebody gets murdered, and I don't know. It's just a bunch of weird stuff. And death is in it. The Grim Reaper is in it. It's pretty cool. It's not like I was disappointed initially because I was really like, oh, Kids in the Hall are back. Like it didn't hit me like that, but in retrospect, it's still quite good. It still has all the stuff that you like about that. That humor and those characters and stuff like that.
Yeah, you just got to think, comedy's changed, they've changed, they've gotten older, their sensibilities have changed.
Exactly.
You can't really expect the same quality or same thing because it may not even work anymore.
It's still very similar. It's still that kind of style, though. Really weird.
It's not like I'm crushing your head type shit, though.
Yeah, I know. I love that.
I mean, I don't know how well that stuff ages, but
I probably already asked you if you saw any of Young Drunk Punk.
Like you have. Let me see. A lot of this stuff I just think I wasn't able to find.
I think they canceled it after like one season, but it still comes on. Mm-mm. It was weird.
Gotta track it down. Oh, that's got Bruce on it. Okay.
Yeah. It's basically about him. It's loosely based on his life when he was a teenager. It's set in like 1981 or something.
Oh man, I didn't really need to see that then. Nope, never seen it.
Yeah. Once again, I saw most of it, like episodes out of order and stuff. Some of it's some of it's great.
That's the way most stuff is.
Yeah, kind of. But again, it does have that kind of weird off-kilter type of humor and characters and stuff, so enough sort of familiarity for someone like me, I guess.
I love sitcoms, so I'll definitely be on board.
I certainly wish they could have done another season or two, because it did have some good concepts in it. The young actors they get to play the young version of themselves are pretty good. Give them credit. But I'm trying to think of some more things about Kurosawa in general and stuff. I mean, it's easy to understand like why to Western audiences, so much of Japanese film seems inaccessible. But somebody like Kurosawa makes it accessible because he has sort of that dynamic, bold style that, you know, probably was influenced by Western cinema anyway. Even though although it still kept a lot of Japanese spirits and stuff. And again, to that point, he was criticized from within by critics there, and even some other Japanese filmmakers for, you know, being too strongly influenced by foreigners, or even accused of catering to foreign audiences, which I think is pretty stupid. He also was pretty different from most Japanese guys in that he wasn't really the thoughtful, introspective type you'd expect from a Japanese filmmaker. He was actually more brash and macho. And you kind of see that in his work, too. Most of his characters are sort of rugged, heroic figures and stuff. And again, some of these criticisms that are leveled against him are just sort of like criticizing somebody just for, you know, things that they're not. It's like, you're really good at this, this, and this, but you're not this. Well, I can't be everything. Because, like, one of the things on that is, like, people saying, well, he didn't really make movies that really had strong female parts. Well, no, I guess he didn't, but not everybody has to.
Look at when they were set, though. I mean,
and that too, right? Like, a lot of them were period pieces from a time when, you know, especially in Japan, where a woman's play, you know, was very minimized. And that's actually something that's interesting in this movie, being based on Macbeth, is you get like a strong female. She doesn't get a lot of scenes, but she's very important. She drives the action of the plot. She's the one that influences her husband to commit the murder and do everything in the first place. So at least in this movie, you can say there's a strong female. And the witch is not exactly a typical female character, but, you know, if we're going to split hairs, sure, why not? But yeah, I guess it's just that he. What was the other thing? Just sort of about how he was maybe even elitist, because most of his characters were kind of like of, I guess, the upper echelon of society and stuff like that. But I don't think that's true either, because a lot of his characters were also sort of rebels and stuff. Like, most of his main characters were usually, rebelling against something bigger, and they were, more off the beaten path, I always thought, and stuff. But yeah, it's just interesting that some certain people, specifically within his home of Japan, were just so eager to criticize him, just like pointing out the things that he's not good at or whatever. It's like, yeah, okay, nobody's good at everything, you know. But you know, saying that he wasn't progressive enough, since, you know, they had peasants that didn't really break out of their roles and stuff like that. And what was it? I want to say that after everything, the peasants were the stronger, closely clinging to the earth. It was the samurai who were weak, basically, because they were being blown by the winds of time. Yeah, so some of this stuff was sort of lost on people, because that was the other thing. As much as he liked samurais, he liked to point out, like, the flaws they had, and the flaw in kind of that system, which is true. Like, a samurai is very much like anything else that comes with a lot of authority and authority, and what's the other word I'm looking for? I don't know, you know, like a high reputation or whatever like that. And that there were plenty of people in history that abused the position. You know, they were not good samurais. They were not honorable, and, you know, they were basically lazy and corrupt and stuff. And, you know, sometimes he would point that out. So he wasn't just saying, like, oh, the samurais were, you know, without flaw and stuff like that. Let's see. The Kurosawa brought Japanese film to a Western audience meant to certain people that he must be pandering to Western values and politics. But he's never catered to a foreign audience and condemned those who do. So yeah, that still continues to be something that gets debated about, mostly by Japanese themselves, about whether or not he was concerned with catering to foreign audiences and stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm not somebody who can judge it because I'm not Japanese, but to me, it seems very much like he kept very many important Japanese aspects to all his work. But maybe I'm just saying that from the eyes of a foreigner, where everything seems very foreign and Japanese to me. I don't know. But just like we said, he could have done a more straightforward version of a Shakespeare thing, and yet he incorporates the no stuff, which is pretty cool. I don't know.
It's still not Japanese enough.
Yeah. For some people, yeah, it's just not, like, because apparently for them it's still World War II. And stuff, but I would think for the most part he has a really sterling reputation now, amongst especially amongst directors for the world. You know, Robert Altman, Coppola, Spielberg, Scorsese, obviously George Lucas, all big fans of him. Several of them were on hand to give him his Lifetime Achievement Oscar in 1990. which he did show up to receive, which is pretty cool.
That's cool.
But yeah, I definitely need to revisit some of his films because there were a couple of them I saw so long ago that I was less of a cinephile back then, so I didn't watch them with the same critical eye as I do now. So some of that stuff would be good to revisit for sure. Again, part of me wonders if maybe we should have done like Rashomon or something, but I don't know. I still really do enjoy this movie, even though, as we said, maybe we're at a loss to really dissect it too much because it's a fairly simple and straightforward story. There's not a lot to dissect. There's not a lot to analyze exactly, except in terms of how it adapts the Shakespeare story to a different environment and time and stuff like that. And as we said, we tried to talk about the style and stuff. It's definitely, as you said, it's too bad that he didn't get to do more color films because he seems to be really good with color. But at the same time as saying that, this film I think is a really beautiful black and white film. It really takes advantage of the black and white medium, with the use of the fog and especially the forest scenes. Especially the forest scenes look really good and eerie with the forest spirit witch thing and stuff like that. Really, really enjoyable and looks really good. And I think that's another reason why he'll always stand out. Really, just is for one of the more simple reasons is that he just has a very endearing visual style. That I think can just grab anybody, and it was somewhat unique the way he went about it in some ways. Like we said, the wipes kind of became his own thing. He almost became synonymous with it. I'm not saying that's a genius thing or anything like that, but it's a cool thing, and it's a nice touch to a lot of his films. And besides that, now that I think about it, there's some of that no theater stuff going on in some of his other films. This film, you see it again too in the interiors and stuff, because the way the no stage is done is that it's supposed to be very open. It's supposed to sort of like blur the lines sort of between where the audience is in the stage, in that the stage is very close, almost right on top of the audience. And you see some of that in this, where they have like the interior scenes where everybody's sitting down and talking and the camera's like right in there type thing. I know that's not very well explained, but hopefully people understand what I mean. Sort of the camera placement is what I mean, is that you get sort of this feeling of openness is the only word I can really come up with. All I mean is the way he shoots the interiors feels almost more like a stage than a screen, is kind of what I'm trying to say, but I don't know if I'm really wording it well. But yeah, and we will talk more about Kurosawa even in later episodes as we compare him to some of the other filmmakers, and we don't want to give all the filmmakers away exactly, but we're doing one other Japanese filmmaker, somebody that preceded him, Yasuhiro Ozu, who is very, very different from Kurosawa. Whereas Kurosawa's dynamic, this guy is not dynamic. He's very sparse, pretty much, in a way. And in the subject matter he did was completely different too and stuff. And so we'll talk a little more about Kurosawa when we do an Ozu film, because it makes sort of a nice compare and contrast. Because I think when people think of Japanese cinema, they kind of almost think it begins and ends with Kurosawa. But the fact is, there's quite a few really good ones. And in the 20th century, there's sort of a big three, Kurosawa being one, Ozu being the other, and probably the middle guy, I always forget his name, Kenji Mizoguchi, who has done some really great films. And he's another guy that I'd like to watch. But if we ever do him, maybe not in this series, but just do it down the line, his most famous film is a film that kind of reminds me of this in some way. It's just called Ugetsu. And it's because it's also set in feudal Japan, although it's not about samurais, but it also has ghosts in it. It actually is a ghost story. It's also black and white. I think it's 1962 or something like that. Anyway, it has a very sort of eerie feel, and there's forests and stuff. So it actually visually at least has some things in common with this film. But Mitsuguchi, I always feel like, is kind of the forgotten one. Although he was probably the one who was the most well-received and famous in Japan while he was working, because his films were very en vogue. Because pretty much all of his films were period pieces from the feudal area and those eras, because that was very much en vogue in Japan at the time, especially because it was following some of those theatrical styles and stuff like that. He was very much about the mise-en-scene stuff, his long takes, and again, it'll be interesting to talk about him maybe sometime in the future too. I don't want to do too much, but just wanted to point out that, yeah, I think most people, when they think Japanese film, rightly so, they think about Kurosawa. But there's some others, and it's interesting, especially when you think of those three, is how different they all are from each other, which is really quite something.
Yeah, I've only seen a few of Ozu's films. I don't know that I've seen any of
The only one I've seen is Ugetsu.
Getsu.
Yeah, which is often on like critics' lists of like best
Really?
films ever made. Yeah, it's a really interesting, cool film. Takes a little while to get going, but once it does, I think it really grabs you and stuff. But he's another one like Ozu who started very early and was doing silent films, and just like Ozu, most of his silent films are now lost. But oh, that's not true. I did see one of his silent films on TV once. I'm trying to remember what the hell it was called. I can't remember. It might have been This Morning Sun Shines. Let's see. It was one that was all about like some old woman. No, that's not it, because that's one that's partially lost too. Anyway, I don't know. But anyway, he's been super prolific. Did movies all throughout the 20s, 30s, 40s. Ugetsu is actually one of his last films. It was 53, sorry, not 62. He only did a handful of films after that. But even though that's like his big hit, sort of internationally, like all throughout the 40s, at least he was very well known, and he's, as we said before, there are so many different movie versions of the story, the 47 Ronin. He also has one. I'd be interested in seeing it because I've seen several of the 47 Ronin movies, including one with Keanu Reeves from a few years ago. But yeah, he was the one that was sort of the most celebrated in his time, because Mitsuguchi, just because he was sort of focusing on the kind of stuff that the Japanese public at the time liked the most, those sorts of period pieces and stuff. And for a difference from, say, somebody like Kurosawa, he did actually often have prominent female characters, so that's kind of interesting too.
Were they strong female characters though?
I don't know. Maybe they weren't feminist enough.
I mean, I would imagine his pre-war stuff probably not.
Exactly, right? I mean, what do people want? Like,
I mean,
times are what they are and stuff. It's great that now we live in a world where we're so connected and everything, but guess what? We weren't. If you were a Japanese filmmaker in the 1940s, there was all sorts of stuff that you just didn't know, and it wasn't because you were ignorant or racist. It's because you didn't know, you know. But anyway,
yeah, we take all this stuff for granted. Like just the ability to look up like facts is such an amazing thing to me.
yeah.
You know, like, hey, I wonder about this, or I wonder about that, and I can look it up and have the answer, in seconds.
Yeah.
It's a great learning.
Like before, you had to have a book, a specific book that maybe you couldn't find, and maybe the book didn't even have the right information because it was, just like I was thinking about, like specifically again Japanese, like somebody like Osamu Tezuka, the godfather of manga, Astro Boy, and so many other things. Like, is that like most people, people that have brains and are fans of manga and stuff, understand that Osamu Tezuka was not racist, and that yes, the stuff like when he drew like black characters or characters from South Pacific Islands, they would be what we consider now sort of racist caricatures. But that wasn't his fault or anything. It was on purpose because he never saw these people. He didn't see them.
Right. He had no way of knowing.
He had no way, and it's not like they were on TV for him either, He just didn't see them. He didn't have a frame of reference to draw from, except other already existing, racist caricatures and stuff. So yeah, so a lot of this stuff, it's not from a place of, hatred or racism. It's just from not knowing. So, I mean, again, I think most people understand that. And usually when you get a work of his that has any of those in it, there's a little thing at the beginning explaining, that kind of thing to people. And they say, we don't believe in altering an artist's work, so we're going to leave it as it is, which I think is right. So yeah, but as we said, yeah, it's so easy nowadays living in the world we live in, everything connected, just being so appalled by this and that and the other thing, and not taking into account the fact that, well, they didn't have the same things that we have now. They weren't exposed to things the way they were. They weren't educated the way we were. That they're just things they didn't know, and they didn't always make them terrible people.
Yeah.
I mean, especially somebody like Osamu Tezuka, who was, he had every reason to like hate Americans. Uh, he actually got beat up by a whole bunch of American soldiers one night, in post-war Japan. And instead of that making him hate foreigners, it made him mad at himself because he felt the whole reason they beat him up was because they were speaking English and he was speaking Japanese. And he felt it was a miscommunication. And he thought it's really important for people to learn how to communicate. That's what he took away from that. He didn't think, oh, fuck those white devils,
Gotta hand it to him on that.
So yeah, no, he was far from racist or anything like that. Anyway, so yeah, it's interesting. It's fun to talk about these Japanese filmmakers, and an episode we'll do later on. We're not going to do a back-to-back two Japanese things, but Ozu is going to be one of our guys in this series. I just put that out there. Jay and I didn't discuss it, but I was thinking next week maybe we could do Ingmar Bergman.
Hey, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. We have not nailed that down because obviously he was one of the names on our list, but we didn't get too far with exactly which film to do yet. But we'll let you know. Hopefully, everything will be back on time, and we'll do have our usual Tuesday slot. The last weekend, it feels like forces have conspired against us to keep us from getting stuff done. Jay and I both had some things come up and stuff like that. I know you had last night there was a tornado in your area.
Yeah, it didn't touch down or anything, so everything was fine. Yeah. It was just kind of scary for a minute.
Yeah, well, still, other things on your mind. So
yeah. Had it touched down, I wouldn't be here right now. So
I think so. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been anywhere close to a tornado because of where I live. Although I remember one day I looked them up and I was surprised. I was shocked to find out I was looking up Canadian tornadoes because you never hear about them really, except every once in a while there's one out on the prairies or something. Although they're never bad. I was shocked to find out how many have actually been in Atlantic, Canada. Yeah. They just weren't very big.
Mm-hmm.
But I just figured, they just don't happen here. They actually do. I lived my whole life to a point not knowing that, but they actually do. So, but obviously not say somewhere like the American Midwest where. Mm-hmm. Where they can really cause damage.
Yeah, Work was saying he would never want to live anywhere like that. It's I think he's kind of got some misinformation on how often it happens. It's not like a everyday occurrence. We all hop in our bomb shelters.
It's a twister. It's a twister.
Yeah, I think a place like Kansas probably gets them a lot more often than we do. But tis the season. The cold weather, warm weather. Mixed together, it usually makes some bad ones, but I don't think there was any damage from last night. There was a lot, but they didn't actually do any damage, I don't think.
Today was actually a pretty decent spring-style day for here, which is funny because we don't really get a real spring here. More or less what we just sort of get is winter just sort of stops. Then we get a bunch of rain and mud. And then summer very slowly starts. When people think of a spring, what a spring is, that barely occurs here. Or when it does, it's all crammed into very fat, a few days. It's suddenly it's spring. We don't really have the nice spring that you picture when, I don't know, you look up a picture of spring in a calendar or a book or something like that. I'm sure somewhere I don't know, say North Carolina or somewhere has a very nice spring, but here it's rain and mud. It's not as cold as winter, and the snow is finally stopping, but it's not exactly nice.
Ours is kind of the opposite of that. It's it goes directly from the mild winter directly into 90-degree summer days. Mm-hmm. There really is no fall is really only comfortable time of year around here. Mm-hmm. Either too hot or too cold.
Fall is my favorite season, and I was so mad about how warm this fall was here. Mm-hmm. It was the end of September and you could still wear shorts and t-shirts, which most people thought was great, but I wasn't. I was I want to wear my hoodie,
Yeah.
I'm dying here, but yeah. Anyway, so thanks a lot for being with us, guys, and putting up with us missing a week and coming in late and stuff. We didn't get the series off to the start exactly we wanted, but still going well. I was really happy to be able to watch another Kurosawa, and I was going to watch Seven Samurai the other day, and then of course I didn't, but I'm definitely going to watch it this week because it is a really fantastic movie, and I don't have to watch it on the computer. I actually have it on my TV, which is a nice bonus and stuff. And I also just discovered that dailymotion.com has quite a few of the Kurosawa films there, which is nice. So I'll maybe try to watch one or two of those over the next week or two. I never watch as many things as I mean to, but I'll try. And so we're thinking about something by Ingmar Bergman next week. And as we said, probably not, Seventh Seal, because that's a little on the nose, but, something else. Because there's some good stuff to draw from there. He's actually somebody that I've, spent most of my life not having seen anything of. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I went kind of on a run and watched like 4 or 5 of his in a row. And I was super impressed by all of them. Very, again, a really interesting filmmaker. So that'll be something cool to do. But I think that'll do it for this week. Let us know what samurai films you've seen, or Japanese films you've seen, or Kurosawa, etc., and we can talk a little about that. And I think apart from that, that'll do for now.
Sounds good.
Don't need to overstay our welcome.
Yeah, guys, just stay tuned to the Twitter. We'll be announcing the film we'll be doing next week.
Yeah, we'll be more vigilant about that this time, I promise. Stuff. I know we kind of let things slide, but again, it wasn't all our fault, But anyway, yeah. So plan is, we'll be back on schedule, and we'll have something on Tuesday for you guys, and probably over the weekend we will let you know specifically which film by Bergman we're doing. So that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks a lot for being with us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys.